This is epic, funny content. This is such good content, rah, ooga booga, ooga, ooh, kiss, oh my god. Ho ho ho, he, Marshall, I'm gonna, Jesus, fuck.
It is I, the ghost of YouTube future.
Why are you a radio?
Wait, what do you mean?
Why are you a radio? You said you're the ghost of YouTube future, right?
Yeah, and?
So, shouldn't you be like a robot or something? Like, literally anything from the future, not something from the past?
Okay, well, first of all, fuck you.
Hey, fuck you!
No, fuck you. I said fuck you first. You can't say it back. Those are the rules.
What rules?
The YouTube future rules.
But you're literally an object from the past. This is so fucking stupid.
You're stupid.
No, you!
Okay. Look, let's start over. Hi, I'm the ghost of YouTube future. I came back in time to tell you that you need to do another series retrospective.
Why?
Because there's a new Halo game coming out soon, and if you want to get big, you gotta get ahead of that hype and get a solid Halo video circulating through YouTube's thick algorithm. What better way to do that than a retrospective that covers a bunch of the Halo games at once, dumbass?
I don't wanna.
What?
I don't wanna.
Why? You've already done a big retrospective before. Why wouldn't you just do it again?
Do you have any idea how long that shit took me to edit? That fucking video was almost an hour long. I don't want to do that again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have very important work to be doing.
I mean, it'll give you an excuse to spend a bunch of money on that Master Chief helmet you've been eyeing. You can use it for skits or something.
Consider it done.
I've always been a pretty big Halo fan, from getting my hands on a copy of Combat Evolved for my shitty hand-me-down Dell PC that I'm pretty sure ran on just like the raw power of disappointment, to going over to my friend's house as a kid to get my ass kicked in Halo 2 multiplayer, to plowing through Halo 3's campaign on Legendary, to grinding for hours to get my hands on that sick-ass EOD helmet in Halo Reach. Holy fuck, that thing looks rad. The series has always been a pretty big part of my life. I really do consider it to be one of the greatest series of first-person shooters ever released. And it's really popular with other people too, so I know I'm objectively right. Appeal to popularity, bitch! So with the new Halo game supposedly just around the corner, you can imagine just how excited I am to get my hands on it and see how it is for myself. And I know I'm sure as fuck not the only one in my friend group that's excited for it either. So, just like with the last series retrospective I did, I got together with my friend Narcost and my brother SystmMltdwn, and we put together another video going through most of the mainline games. I will be covering Halo 2, Halo 3, and Halo 5, Narcost will be talking about Halo 1 and Halo Reach, and Meltdown will be talking about Halo 4. So sit down, strap in, find your uncomfortably large Cortana Rule 34 collection, and let's jump right into it. Let's just jump into it.
Halo is a game that needs no introduction. The influence of Halo in the FPS genre was revolutionary for its time. Even though its following sequels will be more so remembered, the importance of the original Halo cannot be understated. We have to look back at the year 2001. Video gaming is just burgeoning out of its niche market status. The 90s had been good for the industry, and such titles as Doom, Quake, and Half-Life had proven that video games could be cinematic and action-packed experiences. Video gaming was about to enter a revolutionary time period. With Sony's PlayStation 2 and Nintendo's GameCube right around the corner, the Xbox was literally the third wheel in the gaming marketplace. If Microsoft was to succeed, they would need to make one killer app. Halo Combat Evolved was released on November 15th, 2001 to universal acclaim, and it changed the way we looked at FPSs on consoles forever. The game wastes no time in establishing the universe you stepped into and the true horrors of this alien menace. On the Pillar of Autumn, Master Chief awakens amid chaos. The Covenant have invaded the ship and are systematically killing everyone on board, and even worse, they are looking for the coordinates of Earth. Master Chief eventually crash lands on a ring world that contains a legendary weapon called Halo, a super bomb that can wipe out an entire solar system. I'm not even remotely kidding about that. Like, it's fucking ridiculous how explosive that would be. The practicality, whatever, we'll talk about that one later. But seriously, looking back at it, the opening is so straightforward and akin to Star Wars. Cortana is literally a blue woman who sends a message of hope, and a ragtag group of survivors end up destroying a plant-destroying superweapon. Whatever. But eventually Master Chief finds 342 Guilty Spark, who tells him that Halo was created to destroy the Flood. Fuck, how did I forget about the Flood? How can I put this nicely? The Flood are space zombies that look like giant infected hemorrhoids. This is where Halo takes a strong left turn and the precise combat is blown away by pure chaos. They absorb all native life and leave behind the sludge behind them that corrupts the world they touch upon. You know. It's like space AIDS, but I'm telling you, like when I played this game when I was like 11, these things freaked me right the fuck out. And they make these like weird wheezing, coughing things. It still really haunts my soul. Long before Portal, Halo took advantage of telling stories through the environment. Everything you come across is familiar, yet alien, and most of the hierarchy of the Covenant is not explained but shown through their battle tactics. Halo doesn't dump too much exposition on you, but rather shows you the threat in tangible ways. My favorite thing about Halo is how this hierarchy is represented in the battle itself. Traditionally in combat, the grunts are sent in first, followed by elites, and if an elite is killed, the grunts will panic and disperse. What I also forgot to mention is that the 1990s and the 2000s, your characters tended to be gods, wiping out hordes of enemies with massive weapons and explosions. You're not running at 500 miles per hour rocket jumping in Halo. You'd be an idiot to do that. Halo slowed everything down. It gave you opportunities to observe, prioritize targets, and then think strategically. Often just running into a room guns blazing will end with you getting teabagged by an elite within seconds, especially on the higher difficulties. Did I mention the music? The music is incredible, even by today's standards. Gamers who haven't even played Halo recognize the main theme. The sound of a choir hymn will be in the room in seconds, and you know you're in for something epic. Honestly, the score by Martin O'Donnell does nothing but enhance the game and gives it a life of its own through his composition. Halo wouldn't nearly be as engrossing if it wasn't for the score. It seems to know when you need a boost or to bring you into the warped horror of the Flood. It's too good for words to describe, and you're doing yourself a disservice by not listening to it. Seriously, after you're done watching this video, just go and listen to the theme and tell me you didn't just a little bit. Sorry, there's just so many components to this game that are good that I forgot about the storyline. Sorry for the segue, but eventually Master Chief ends up blowing up the Halo device, but the game ends with a tease for a sequel. Halo 2 was still years away, but I remember fantasizing where this could take the series. If only I had known. Why don't you tell them about it, Freeze?
Sir, permission to leave the station?
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Permission granted.
Come on! Fucking fit, damn it!
Creating the first sequel to a brand new IP is always a challenge. As a developer, you have the difficult job of looking at the first installment, seeing what worked about it, and building on that while changing or removing whatever didn't. Sometimes this will go not so great, and you'll end up with something like Devil May Cry 2. But other times, if you have the right team, you'll end up with something like Halo 2. Halo 2, at least in my opinion, is easily the second best title to ever come out of the Halo franchise. The way they built on the original game's already fun combat, I guess you could say it's combat evolved. As well as its fantastic story and the way it brought a whole new layer of depth to the game's world made it an absolutely unforgettable experience. The obvious first step to expanding the original game's gameplay was to expand the arsenal the player gets to work with. Between the standard guns you'd expect to see in pretty much any shooter like the assault rifle, shotgun, and sniper rifle, as well as the more creative weapons that help the game feel more unique like the needler, plasma rifle, and plasma grenades, the original Halo already had a pretty fun collection of weapons to play with, and Halo 2 did a great job of expanding on that. Between the Covenant Carbine, Brute Shot, Sentinel Beam, as well as the ability to dual-wield weapons like the SMGs, Halo 2 gives you plenty to work with. But by far my favorite addition to the roster of usable weapons is the Elite Energy Sword. In retrospect, this is kind of an odd decision to make in a shooter game. Well, at least a shooter game from the early 2000s. I mean, melee weapons in shooters certainly weren't unheard of. One immediate example that comes to mind is the original Half-Life with Gordon's signature crowbar, but he was just a physicist, not trained for combat. In that game, you're just some guy caught in a bad situation trying to get out alive with whatever you have around you. In the Halo series, you're a soldier. Everyone in it is a soldier. Everyone participating is not only trained for war, but they're also equipped for war. Why would a military force as advanced as the Covenant spend resources creating a weapon you have to get so close to the enemy to actually use? Outside of some fucky-wucky lore reasons created afterwards to justify it anyways. And it's not like they had to make them usable weapons just because they were in the original Halo, because yeah, they were in the game, but just barely. Only stealth and high-ranking elites had them, and you didn't really come across those very often. The vast majority of elites just used, you know, guns? Bungie very easily could have just written that off as a one-time thing and focused on making brand new weapons instead, but they didn't, and if I'm being honest, that may have been one of the best decisions they've ever made. And considering how iconic the image of the Energy Sword has become to the fans of the series, I think most people would agree with me there. I think the main reason the Energy Sword is not only as fun to use as it is, but also really effective for taking out tougher enemies is the lunge mechanic. Jerking forward as you strike makes your swings feel like they have much more kick behind them, and it also makes the weapon far more viable in multiplayer considering it cuts down the amount of time enemies have to kill you before you take their head off like you're a Frenchman in the 1700s. And that right there is what makes this sword so unique for its time. It's not just some shitty little knife or crowbar or whatever backup weapon the game gives you for when your main weapons run out of ammo. This is your main weapon. It's equally as viable in combat as any other gun in the game. Hell, there are plenty of situations where the energy sword is far more useful than basically anything else you could have equipped. But setting all the cool new guns aside, I think easily my favorite thing about this game is its story. Halo 2 did something unique that I don't see happen very often in video games. It starts off by showing the consequences of your actions in the original game. Not just the consequences on your side, but on the enemy side as well. Halo 2 kicks off with the commander of the enemy troops from the previous game being punished for his failure to stop you. These shots, juxtaposed with shots of the Master Chief being celebrated and rewarded for his accomplishments, show the former commander being stripped of his rank, stripped of his honor, brutally tortured, and used as a public example for what happens to those that fail in such a monumental fashion. And through these scenes, not only does the game sort of... Is humanize the right word when the guy we're talking about literally isn't a human? Not only does it humanize this specific enemy that tried to destroy us in the first game, but it also gives us a look into the political world of the Covenant. It introduces us to those that command the Covenant and what their ultimate motivation is. They aren't trying to wipe out humanity just for the hell of it, they're a religious cult looking for a way to achieve some great journey to salvation. They didn't just view the Halo ring as a weapon, it was a sacred artifact, and humanity's very presence on it was an act of heresy. It's such a cool and unique way of teaching the player about who it is they're really up against. But on top of that, it also served as a great way of introducing us to this new character's story. We meet this elite at what is likely the lowest point in his life. He has nothing now, and it's all because of the game's primary protagonist. But we see him get his second chance as the High Prophets work behind the scenes and grant him a new life. Not as a commander, but as the new arbiter of the Covenant. The playable missions begin about how you would expect. Earth is found and attacked by the Covenant, and the player once again gets to jump into the shoes of Master Chief to repel this attack. After doing so, the Covenant retreats, and Master Chief, accompanied by Commander Keyes, Sergeant Johnson, and a bunch of human troops follow them through slipspace. But before we find out what happened with them, the game decides to stop simply showing us what's happening with the new Arbiter. It's time to experience it for ourselves through his own campaign missions. The majority of the missions in Halo 2 still revolve around Master Chief, and don't get me wrong, they're very well done. They very much feel like the same types of things you would go through in the first game, but vastly improved through new weapons, better writing, and, at least in my opinion, more interesting level designs. But my favorite missions were always the ones where you got to play as the Arbiter and experience his side of the story. At this point in the franchise, at least in the games, Master Chief is really kind of a blank slate. There isn't much to his character other than badass super soldier ready to take down the Covenant and protect humanity. Hell, you don't even know what this dude's backstory is unless you read The Fall of Reach or something, and who the fuck did that, am I right? We're gamers, not readers. That shit's for fucking nerds. Got him! But the Arbiter? Now we have a real character on our hands. We actually have an idea of what this character's backstory and motivations are. And as the campaign develops, you get to see his beliefs challenged and allegiances change. You don't get that shit with Master Chief. He's just, haha, alien thing goes splat. Plus, you get to use the Elite's cloaking device during his missions, which is fucking cool. That's the only reason you need to prefer playing as the Arbiter over Master Chief. Suck my dick. As the game's campaign progresses, it throws another interesting curveball at us. Much like in the first game, the Covenant's dumb fucking around on the Halo installation releases the Flood. However, this game introduces us us to something that gives the Flood far more depth than they originally had. In the original game, much like Nar said previously, the Flood essentially felt like weird-looking space zombies, just big-ass balloon tumors that attach to and control organic creatures, living or dead. But there's a little more to them than just that. Even back then, between being able to use what was to them alien weaponry and methodically collecting bodies for future use, it was pretty heavily implied that they had at least some intelligence beyond just a raw instinct to kill. But this game reveals that they're far more than just semi-intelligent zombies. This game introduces us to a new aspect of the Flood. The Gravemind. This thing fucking terrified me growing up, and I absolutely love it. A giant tentacled monster that commands the Flood makes these things feel so much more threatening. These aren't just individual creatures looking for their next meal, these things are a hive mind. These things are an army, and this deadly, scheming, maniacal creature is their commander. Now, I'm not gonna harp too much longer on the story because I think it's a pretty safe bet that most, if not all of you watching, are already pretty familiar with how things go. The Prophet of Truth betrays the elites and commands the brutes to kill them all. The Gravemind forms a temporary, tentative alliance with the Chief and Arbiter to stop the brute chieftain Tartarus from activating the Halo rings, and Cortana stays on the Covenant ship High Charity just in case she needs to light things up harder than the Notre Dame. I don't want to see a single comment complaining about that joke. It's been over a year now. Fuck you. I could go on and on about the things I love about this game for hours, but I know we've got 4 other games we need to go through, so I think it would be best if I end things off here. But I truly do consider this game to be one of the highest points for Halo as a franchise. The only game I consider to be even better is Halo Reach, and I promise you I could go on for even longer about why that game's as great as it is. But I can't because Nar called dibs on reviewing that one. Fucking selfish piece of shit. Anyways, yeah, this game is fucking great. Time for Halo 3. Bye!
What exactly do you think you're doing, Reclaimer?
Finishing the fight.
Over my dead body you are.
Come on, you can't be serious.
Take this, you bipedal wet toe freak!
You're cheating! That's cheating!
At least my parent company made me with love!
Me fucking covey slug. No!
Haha, yes, take that, you beta cunt.
Hey, what you playing, guys?
After Halo 2's cliffhanger ending, a lot of people were excited to see how Halo 3 would pick things back up. Where exactly is the arc that the Oracle told us about? Will Cortana be able to hold her own while confronting the Gravemind? How much will she be forced to tell it? And how exactly will the Master Chief get off that Covenant ship? Oh, that's how. Halo 3 is a weird one for me. On the one hand, this game does a very good job of building on the mechanics and story beats introduced in the previous games, and serves as a satisfying ending to a well-loved trilogy. On the other hand,
It asked, and I answered.
This game is rife with really weird gameplay decisions that make it hard for me to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Halo 2 or Combat Evolved. One of the immediate standouts for me is the janky implementation of the new armor equipment mechanic. I mean, the bubble shield was pretty cool, but beyond that, pretty much every other equipment item is fairly useless and forgettable. Whenever I play this game, the bubble shield is honestly the only armor equipment I would actively seek out. I mean, who the fuck actually made use of the deployable shield? This thing fucking sucks. You can go through the entire campaign without using your armor equipment once and you really won't be missing out on much. Hell, I legitimately forget it's even there 90% of the time I play this game because it rarely serves any real purpose. It's just kinda there. It almost feels like a beta test for a new mechanic they want to better flesh out in a later game, which they kinda did. And that's not really something you want to be feeling in a game that's meant to serve as the final chapter in the Human Covenant Flood War story arc. Like, this is it. This is the end of this huge chapter in the Halo universe, and now you want to fuck around with a new janky mechanic that does nothing for the game? Why? Why? I'm also not a huge fan of the implementation of the brutes as the main bad guys leading the enemy troops. Now, obviously this wasn't something they could work around, seeing as how the previous game kicked the elites out of the Covenant and pretty well locked in the brutes as their replacements, but the issue is that they just don't feel as fun to fight. They're bigger targets, their shields don't regenerate, which means you can play it far more defensively than you could in previous games with the elites, and when they go berserk, it is just the easiest shit to counter. Just move back and shoot. It's so bad, and it sucks because I do like the idea of the brutes being the main bad guys you face up against, but it's just handled so poorly. They could have come across as their own cool and unique enemy type, but they just feel like elites, but worse. And then of course there's this shit. Look, I get what they were going for.
Cortana plays a huge role in the fiction of this game, and we didn't want people to forget about her.
No, I don't want to chance a remote detonation.
I need to stay here.
By the end of Halo 2, the Chief is separated from Cortana for the first time.
After I'm through with Truth.
Now make a girl a promise. If you know you can't keep it.
You need to constantly remind players of what they're missing, that this thing is something worth going after.
Like, okay, yeah, I get where they're coming from and I don't really even disagree. There absolutely should be a consistent reminder to show why this matters so much to the Master Chief. After all, he's gone through 2 entire games now with her in his head this entire time. There's obviously going to be some emotional attachment to her and you need to convey that to the audience somehow to make sure they're invested in her safety as well. But there has to have been a better way of doing that than repeatedly slowing the player to an absolute crawl and making them listen to some vague messages from her. It works pretty well the first time because you aren't really expecting it, but it gets old real fucking quick. It's incredibly annoying when you're running from point A to point B and all of a sudden, whoa, hey, slow down there, buckaroo!
You've got mail!
Honestly, you could probably have just left the messages as they are and just let the player move at normal speed while it's happening and they would have been far more bearable. Especially if you're going to do it multiple times in the same fucking level.
I have walked the edge of the abyss. I have seen your future and I have learned. There will be no more sadness, no more anger, no more envy. This is UNSC AI serial number CTN0452-9.
Stop! But despite all that, there are plenty of gameplay additions that help keep 3 really fun to play through. The Spartan laser is really fun to use, the Hornet is probably one of the best vehicles ever put into a Halo game, and alright, I'm just gonna fucking say it. Being able to rip off a turret and just go to town on people with it is probably the most fun mechanic ever put into a Halo game. The way it makes you feel like an unstoppable juggernaut without having to get into a bulky tank or something is just such an absolute blast. God bless you for this, Bungie. God bless you! But I also think the story is a pretty big part of why I've always had such mixed feelings about Halo 3. Because on the one hand, the vast majority of the game's story feels entirely predictable. The Flood's appearance in the first Halo was an unexpected turn that took what could have been a simple human versus alien shooter and turned it into a genuinely interesting sole survivor story. Then Halo 2 came around and not only showed us the inner workings of the Covenant, but it also showed their betrayal of what was once their most trusted group of warriors and allowed us to experience the journey of a disgraced commander becoming a leading force against them. But Halo 3 doesn't really do that, not until near the very end at least. It picks up right where the second game left off and takes us on exactly the course you'd expect. The Covenant makes their way to the Ark, humanity and the elites follow, the Flood attacks, the Master Chief and Arbiter stop the Prophet of Truth from activating the Halo rings and destroy the Flood. Bada bing, bada boom, we're done here. That said, the way in which the predictable plot is presented is still enjoyable enough that it's still a fun time to go through. One of my favorite standout moments is towards the end of the game when the Arbiter and Master Chief finally catch up to the Prophet of Truth. By this point, the Prophet's self-centered, egotistical zealotry is on full display. He's sitting here, dying of a Flood infection, and he still refuses to believe that he's going to lose. And as he sits here, ranting and raving, his final exchange between him and the Arbiter takes place and essentially brings the Arbiter's arc to a close.
I am Truth, the voice of the Covenant! So, you must be silenced.
Holy fuck, please impregnate me. And I also think it really speaks to the talent of the people that worked at Bungie that despite this being our third game dealing with them, the Flood still comes across as a terrifying threat. The way our first meeting in this game has dimmer lighting than the rest of the game, with visible fogs of Flood spores that make even the air look diseased. And the unnerving soundtrack playing in the background, it almost feels like a horror game at points. The overall presentation of this game knocks it out of the fucking park.
What is it? More brutes? Worse.
Holy fuck, please impregnate me! And remember how I mentioned that there is an unexpected direction the game takes, but not towards the end of the game? Well, it turns out that between the first game and now, the Ark has been building a replacement for the Halo ring you destroyed in the original game. And not only that, but when we find Cortana, she still has the activation index from when she stole it from 343 Guilty Spark way back then. As someone that also reuses his own old content all the fucking time, that's pretty damn impressive. Legitimately though, that's actually a pretty cool way of dealing with the flood infestation on the Ark while also serving as a neat little throwback. Like, their whole thing up to this point has been stop the rings from firing, stop the rings from firing, and now they kind of have to just go, fuck it, let's do the thing we've been stopping them from doing. And they did it with the same key they stole 2 games ago. Turns out hoarding shit is actually pretty awesome. These moments and revelations are legitimately well done, and I want to like the story much more than I do. It certainly feels like it's the most well polished of them so far, but there are just so many little things holding it back that it just pulls away from the experience. Like, yeah, the Arbiter finally getting his revenge on the Prophet of Truth was cool and all, but did it have to be preceded with Commander Keyes Pearl Harboring into the control room and trying to save Sergeant Johnson all by herself? Like, she didn't take a single Marine to help her. What the fuck did you think was gonna happen, you dumb cunt? Oh well, we got to take down a couple of scarabs, so that was cool at least. All in all, Halo 3 is a genuinely good game, but there's just so much that holds it back from being a truly great game, at least in my eyes. It's certainly better than Combat Evolved, but it just doesn't really stack up to being as good as Halo 2. But like I said before, it does do its job. It serves as a well enough ending to the original trilogy, and even ends the same way by blowing up a Halo ring. Hell, the last playable section is basically a redo of the driving section at the end of Combat Evolved. I know some people like to describe this decision as lazy, but I honestly disagree. I don't think they did this out of laziness or lack of ideas, I think they did this specifically to make it feel like things have come full circle. Despite my many nitpicks, this game was one that was clearly made with love. Love for the fans, love for the characters, love for the entire universe. And it really does show, and I can see why so many people consider it to be their favorite. I just wish there weren't so many tiny annoyances that keep it from being mine as well. Anyways, I guess it's time to finally move on and talk about motherfuck. Yeah, bro? Yeah, bro? Yeah, bro? Oh, I missed it! Oh!
No!
What the fuck?
What? What?
What the sir?
What is going
That was so stupid!
happened?
I don't know.